Who is or who are the DOT? In the United States, the DOT is the Department of Transportation, which is the governing and overseeing body of all transportation, including the trucking industry. But who are they, and what do they do, and why do they matter? In short, they keep the world safe. They are responsible for making sure that both companies who handle transportation and the operators in the transportation industry are safe and legal. Now, you can say what you want about legality and rules, but we all have to follow them, and we all want to be safe. So let's look at it from the trucking industry's point of view on this week's Trucking Tuesday. Hello everyone, I'm Jen, and I work in the office side of the transportation industry in trucking in the United States. And today we're going to be talking about who the DOT are. If you're a driver or someone who works with drivers, you're probably pretty familiar with all the laws and regulations that the DOT oversees. These can be constricting for some things, but overall they're meant to bring safety, order, and consistency to the trucking industry as a whole. So, who are the DOT? Well, the DOT essentially are the governing body of the Department of Transportation for the United States. However, there's DOT officers, which include most state and highway patrol officers, and most local police have at least a few officers who are fully DOT trained in handling commercial vehicle transportation. So what happens with the DOT? Well, they make the laws and safety regulations that benefit everyone. For drivers, they're required to have a CDL or commercial driver's license and a medical physical exam that they have to pass, in addition to some safety skills depending on the type of freight or trailers that they're allowed to carry. For example, if you're someone that's going to haul tanker material or liquid, you have to have a special certification on your license. If you're going to handle double or triple trailers, you have to have special certification. Hazmat requires a lot of different special certification. For most dry van or reefer trailers, which is what I deal with, drivers are required to have their CDL and pass their medical physical. And the medical physical, depending on what state you live in, can be 1 to 2 years, and your CDL is usually 6 to 7 years, like a driver's license. To get a CDL, you're required to take a written test, and you're also required to demonstrate your abilities as a driver. For the physical test, you'll be given an exam by a doctor. This includes a full physical. They also look at breathing. They do sleep apnea tests to make sure that you're not going to fall asleep on the road. And they will also note any kind of special equipment or devices, such as corrective islands, if you need to use a sleep apnea machine. And these will all be noted on your driver's license. If you can't pass the physical part of the medical requirement for the CDL, you can no longer drive over the road, at least outside of your home state, without significant exception. Now, you can retake both the CDL and the physical a few times. The physical would have to be done with obviously another doctor, and you'd have to go through and make sure that you meet all the physical requirements. But ultimately, this is for everyone's safety, the driver, other drivers on the road, and everyone in the industry as a whole. So, when out on the road, drivers are subject to what's called the DOT inspection at any time. This can happen from just simply being pulled over. This could be happening during what we call a blitz or a safety week, or it can happen when a driver goes into a scale house. So why would someone be pulled over? If a driver is driving illegally, if they run a stop sign, run through a intersection, drive somewhere they're not supposed to be. There's lots of places that are posted not safe for trucks, such as residential areas with low bridges, areas, if you're carrying hazmat, you're not allowed to go close to major cities, or if a driver just is exhibiting behavior that's not considered safe, they could be pulled over for any of those reasons. Driver could also be pulled over during what's called Safety or Blitz Week, and these are announced. There are a few times a year. Some states also do individual state safety blitzes, and they'll announce what they're looking for. For example, they could be focusing on brake checks. They could be focusing on hub seals and wheel safety and tire safety. And they'll randomly pull drivers in and have multiple officers working a single site to pull multiple drivers in at a time. And they'll do a DOT inspection and do a deep dive focus on whatever that safety blitz is focusing on. Drivers can also be pulled in at a scale house, or even if a DOT officer is at a truck stop and they notice something wrong with your vehicle, they're going to come over and speak with you about it. It's not that they're picking on drivers. It's not like they're singling them out because they're driving commercial vehicles. It's just simply because they're doing their job to keep everyone on the road safe. So what is a DOT safety inspection? Well, there are 8 levels of them. And this can include inspecting the driver, their hours of service, their ability and capability to drive, and it'll also include the equipment, the truck, and the trailer that they are carrying. So level 1 and level 2 are the most common for CDL drivers. The rest of the levels typically are for people carrying hazmat or hazardous materials or other equipment. Can also involve looking at the carriers themselves and the maintenance that they do on their equipment. But most common for actual over-the-road drivers would be level 1 and level 2. Level 1 is the most involved. It reviews the driver's license, their medical certificate, can involve a drug and alcohol test, a review of their driver's record of hours of duty and status, including their logs, off-duty hours of service. The officer may also do an in-depth review of all safety systems of the truck and trailer. For driving and drivers, this includes the driver's exhaust system, the fuel safety system, lights all around the vehicle, both truck and trailer, wheels, hubs, rims, windshield wipers, and can include a quick assessment of the driver's behavior if impairment is questioned. So what they typically do when they pull you over for one of these is they will initially have you stay in the truck, and they'll come and they'll do a conversation with you. They'll ask you to electronically transfer your logs, since now all drivers are required to have e-logs or electronic logs, and these are easily transferred to the officer. The officer can see the last week of your hours of service, and a longer period of time can be requested quite easily from the carrier. Drivers' hours of service are scrutinized to make sure that drivers are stopping to take their breaks, that they're taking their 10-hour breaks at the end of the day, that they're not using a status such as personal convenience to go to a shipper or receiver, which is not considered legal because it means they're doing it over their actual drive time, and to make sure that drivers are accurately and legally logging the amount of hours that they drive every day. Also, they'll start doing a thorough check of the truck and the trailer safety systems at this point. Sometimes the drivers are allowed to stay in the truck the entire time. The officers may give them directions such as turn on the windshield wipers, flash lights, turn on turn signals, things like that. At some point, the driver may be asked to exit the vehicle, and the officer will step in and look at the overall condition and safety of the truck. And this is why drivers always tell you the cleaner your truck, the less likely you are to get a deep and thorough inspection. They're also going to ask the driver questions about where they're going. They'll ask to see your bill of lading if you're carrying a load, and they'll make sure that everything matches. If they have any questions, DOT officers are allowed to go into the back of the trailer and inspect the load. They are allowed to break the seal if the load is sealed. DOT officers carry their own special seal. You can take a picture of it and send it to the customer so that they know that the load wasn't opened by anyone other than DOT. In some places, especially if you're crossing borders, your load could be subject to x-ray inspection. This is to prevent human trafficking, drug trafficking. Some DOT officers will have dogs with them, and they'll take a walk around your truck. This can also happen a lot of times if you're delivering freight to military or high sensitive areas. And then they'll just do a thorough inspection. Sometimes DOT officers will go so far as to get underneath your truck and trailer to look at brakes, to look at airlines, to just look at the overall safety and how well your truck is maintained, and how well the trailer is maintained and everything that you're keeping up on. They'll ask you questions about how long you do a pre-trip and a post-trip inspection. They'll ask you questions about what you do during your pre-trip and post-trip inspection. And again, none of these are to single out drivers or to say that drivers are doing a bad job. It's literally just to keep people safe. However, if drivers are not following safety protocols, they can be put what is called out of service. And there's a couple of different ways out of service works. If it's something that can be repaired fairly quickly, such as an airline, and the officer can follow the driver down the road to the shop, they may be allowed to do so, and then they can't leave until it's been fixed. Sometimes if it's a bad tire or a leaking hub seal or a light's not working, or another major safety violation, they will put the driver out of service where they are. If they're on the side of the road, the officer may accompany the driver to a safer place, but then the driver is not allowed to leave until the repairs have been made, and then drivers will have to have proof that those repairs have been made in case they get stopped later. If drivers are put out of service for hours of service, they may be required to take a 34-hour reset to erase their whole prior week that the officer found issue with, and they can start fresh clean with a 70. If a driver was to move for any other reason than safety or directed to by another officer while they are put out of service, they risk getting put out of service longer and additional fines. At my company, if a driver is given a DOT inspection and is what's called a clean inspection, so no violations, we do reward our company drivers for that because we like to reward them for doing a good job and keeping their equipment and themselves and everyone on the road safe. A lot of companies do that actually. And if drivers are given violations, we do help them work to get those corrected as quickly as possible. And we also work to help them not have issues like this in the future. A level 2 inspection is more a walk around inspection. They're still looking at safety features, but they're probably not going to crawl in underneath the truck. They're probably not going to get into the freight. They will check over your BOL. They'll check your lights. They'll check things that are easily visually seen. They'll check your hours, but they're not going to get as in depth. But like I said, the point of these inspections and of the DOT governing body as a whole is not to make life difficult for drivers, but to make life safer both for drivers and everyone else out on the road. So, like I said, there's a lot of question, a lot of controversy with what's safe and what's not safe, and people do get frustrated when laws get changed. But overall, I think the DOT does an exceptionally good job keeping people safe. It used to be that drivers didn't have to regulate their hours of service and they could drive as long as they want, and drivers were not sleeping or sleeping very little and causing accidents and harm to themselves. And now having regulations, it just makes sense in keeping the driver safe and giving them a work-life balance that they didn't necessarily have before. And they know they have to, stop every day. Their carriers know they have to stop every day, and they're allowed to have time off. And how they spend that 10 hours, hopefully most of it is sleeping, but of course they get time to call their friends, their family, check in, get some downtime and relax. And that wasn't the luxury that most drivers had before DOT regulations were really stepped up. So, just like driving a car, you're still responsible for your behavior. And if you get pulled over, the best thing to do is to make sure that you're prepared, that you're doing the right thing, and that you're as courteous and understanding and compliant with the officer as possible. And hopefully the inspection will go well. If you're doing what you're supposed to do, they're doing what they're supposed to do, everything's going to work out great. So, that is a kind of quick overview of what the DOT is. Next week, we're going to be talking about an issue that I take a lot of personal interest in, and that is parking and parking safety. If you're a professional driver, I would love to hear from you, or if you know someone who is, feel free to reach out to me in my email at Fracture Christian. And I will see you guys again next week for another episode of Trucking Tuesday. Thanks so much for being here, guys. Please consider liking and subscribing, and stay safe out there. Remember, truckers move America.